Okay, so let us begin the third lecture. And before starting, let us actually do a brief recapitulation of whatever we have learned so far in the last two classes. So, as you know, we were discussing perturbation theory, and we assumed that there are these eigenkets n0 of the unperturbed Hamiltonian H0 with eigenvalues En0, and corresponding to each such eigenket n0 there exists an eigenket n of the original Hamiltonian or the full Hamiltonian capital H with eigenvalue En. This was the structure that with which we started, and this Hamiltonian H was actually consisting of the unperturbed Hamiltonian H0 and the perturbing Hamiltonian H1. Also, let us remind ourselves that the unperturbed eigenkets or eigenstates are basically normalized to unity. In fact, if it is not normalized, you can always normalize it and work around this thing, normalized energy eigenkets. Then what we did was that we introduced a small parameter lambda, and this small parameter lambda was introduced basically to keep track of the orders of smallness in our perturbative expansion. And we had given several arguments in favor of introducing this extra parameter in our theory in the previous classes. So the next step was we assumed that we can express the exact eigenstates and eigenvalues as a power series in lambda, and for that we had written both ket n and the eigenenergies in a power series. For example, ket n was written as sum over lambda to the power m ket nm, and energy eigenvalues En are written as sum over lambda to the power m Enm. So let us remind ourselves at this stage that this 0 in the subscript as well as in the superscript basically denotes everything or the quantities corresponding to the unperturbed Hamiltonian. This 0 does not have anything to any kind of ground states. Now, if this perturbative expansion that we have written in these two equations, if this perturbative expansion is to be useful, successive terms in the series must grow progressively smaller. That is the basic assumption that we need to do in order to go further ahead, and we can then obtain a reasonable approximation to the full energy eigenvalue equation by retaining just the first few terms. If we cannot say, or if we cannot assume that this perturbative series converges, the one way the perturbative series can converge is that successive terms are basically progressively smaller than the previous term, and that is the main assumption that we need to make here. Then what about finding out the eigenvalues and eigenstates corresponding to the full Hamiltonian? You know that this H operator, the Hamiltonian, the full Hamiltonian operator acting on the energy eigenstates is equal to En. Of course, these quantities, as we have previously said, must be functions of lambda. So H lambda acting on n is going to give us En lambda, again acting on the same state n. So this immediately means that H0 plus lambda H1 summed over lambda to the power m Nm is equal to, there will be product of two different summations. One is lambda to the power m En mth state and or mth energy eigenvalue or mth order correction, and then lambda, let us denote this by a different index, which is lambda to the power m prime, n m prime, sum over m prime. Here it is sum over m, and all the sums are infinite sums, m prime from 0 to infinity, m from 0 to infinity, and so on and so forth. Now comes a crucial thing. Since lambda is an arbitrary parameter, for this equation that we have just written, for this equation to hold, the coefficient of each power of lambda must separately satisfy the above equation. This equation, whatever we have written, must be satisfied by the coefficients of each power of lambda, because it is a polynomial. That is what is the property. If I have a polynomial on the left hand side and if I have another polynomial on the right hand side, then, and if I claim that these two polynomials are same, then the powers of different coefficients, these powers of lambda corresponding to different coefficients, these has to be equated. That means whatever is the coefficient of lambda to the power 0 on the left hand side has to be equated with the coefficients of the lambda to the power 0 on the right hand side. Similarly, lambda to the power 1 on the left hand side, whatever are the coefficients, has to be equated with the coefficients of the lambda to the power 1 term on the right hand side. So if therefore we perform the same steps and we first collect the coefficients of lambda to the power 0 from both the sides of this above equation, what we get is H0 acting on N0 is giving us En0 N0. Then you go and calculate coefficient of lambda from both sides. This we had done in the previous class. I am not expanding the above equation again and showing you these steps. This, if you do, the equation that you will get is this that I am writing now. So this is equal to En0 ket n1 plus En1 ket n0. So this En1 is the corrected value of the energy, the first order correction to the energy. Ket n1 is the first order eigenstate corrected energy, correct first order corrected eigenstate, and so on and so forth. So if you remember what we did to figure out what is the first order energy correction because of the perturbation, we actually multiply both sides by the dual of n naught. That means the bra vector n0 h0 n1 plus n0 h1 n0 is equal to, because En0 is a number, it will give us n0 n1, and similarly En1 is a number 2, this will give us En1 bra n0 ket n0. So I am not writing the second order terms here. I am just restricting myself to the first order coefficient or the lambda to the power 1 term. And if you can notice here, this H0 operating on this N0 will give us En0. So this is going to give us En0 N0 N1 is equal to N0 plus N0 H1 N0 equal to En0 N0 N1 plus En1. because n0 this quantity is normalized to unity, so this is just En1. So this term gets cancelled from both sides and you get the first order correction to energy as n0 H1 n0. It is a very interesting as well as very important result in the perturbation theory calculation, non-degenerate perturbation theory calculation. What it says is that the first order shift in energy due to the perturbing Hamiltonian is the expectation value of the perturbing Hamiltonian in the unperturbed state corresponding to that energy. This is a very interesting result because you see that this first order shift, what we have calculated just now, is basically the expectation value, because this is what you know is the expectation value of the perturbing Hamiltonian. This is H1 in the unperturbed state. Look at the states in which you are calculating the expectation value. These states are basically corresponding to the states of the unperturbed Hamiltonian H0. So the expectation value is calculated in the unperturbed state, which corresponds to this energy. So you must be very happy to hear this, simply because it says that the first order correction to energy can be calculated even without the knowledge of what happened to the state. You see that you have started applying the perturbation, and you have applied this perturbation lambda h1 to the original Hamiltonian h0, but whatever changes that have happened in the En1 or the energy eigenstates or energy eigenvalues does not depend on the state. It is still the original unperturbed state which comes into the calculation finally. The result finally contains the states which are corresponding to the Hamiltonian which is unperturbed, corresponding to H0 Hamiltonian. So we don't need to know how the state changes due to the perturbation. That is, I don't need Kate N1. We just need the original state and the perturbation to calculate the first order correction to energy. Therefore, to this order, that is to first order in lambda or to first order in perturbation, the energy is the unperturbed energy plus n0 h1 n0, and then there is a lambda, but as we said, after the calculation we can always put this lambda equal to 1. Lambda, if you remember, was introduced to keep track of the order of perturbation. Okay, so that's it. We have evaluated this thing, but now I give you a physical insight into this energy correction, first order energy correction. Now let us calculate the first order correction to the energy eigenstate. Of course, because of the perturbation, the energy eigenstate is going to change, and that energy eigenstate after the perturbation, what will that energy eigenstate be? That is what we need to figure out. So again, we start with this equation. Let me just copy paste this equation from here. Oops. This equation, we will again work with this equation, but now this time we will take the inner product of this equation with a different unperturbed state. So what we will do, we will take the inner product with, say, another state k naught, where k is not equal to n. This is important. Why this is important, we will see just now. Okay, so if I multiply both sides of this equation with this bra k naught, what do we get? K naught h naught n1 plus k naught h1 n naught. This is equal to, because en0 is a number, we don't care, and this k naught directly goes to n1, and then this will be en1 k naught n naught. Now we have just said that k cannot be equal to n. The orthonormality relation of the energy basis therefore will lead to this quantity being equal to 0. That is very trivial, because both of these quantities k naught and n naught are the eigenstates corresponding to the unperturbed Hamiltonian. Now we know that this inner product should give us delta kn, but we have just assumed that k cannot be equal to n. We have just said that k is not equal to n. Since k is not equal to n, the orthonormality now becomes trivial. Orthonormality relation will imply that k naught n naught equal to 0. Okay, so what remains is this. So let me number these equations. So let me number this as 2, let me number this equation as 1. Okay, so what remains is this: k naught h naught n1 plus k naught h1 n naught equal to en naught k naught n1. But this again, this h naught will operate on k naught and it will give me e k naught, right? So this is going to give me e k naught n1 plus k naught h1 n naught is equal to e n naught k naught n1. So this therefore immediately gives you k naught inner product with n1 is equal to k naught h1 n naught divided by e n naught minus e k naught. Here immediately you can see why k not equal to n criteria was essential. K not equal to n immediately tells you that there is no degeneracy at this level, and this makes sure that this denominator does not diverge. That is why k not equal to n was necessary. This is an important result. You will see soon why this is important. So let me put it in a box, and let me also give a number to this equation. So what does this tell us? This tells us how much of N1 lies along K naught for K not equal to N. This is the physical interpretation of the inner product, right? As I already told you in the previous class, if we have two vectors and if we take the dot product, that immediately means that you are basically projecting one onto the other. You think of the Cartesian vectors and you take two vectors A and B and you calculate the inner product, that means A dot B. That means essentially this is going to give you A dot B is equal to mod of A into mod of B into cosine theta. What is that? That is nothing but the projection of one of the vectors along the other direction. Here also it is same. It tells you how much of this abstract vector K10(1) lies along the K naught direction. Okay. However, still this problem of finding N1 is not done, because our target is to figure out what this N1 or the first order correction to the energy is. We need to do that. So we will proceed with this result and we will finally use this equation 3 at some stage. That is why this equation is important. Now we can always use the unperturbed basis state K naught to express N1. That is always possible. So if we have a basis set, then you can write down any other vectors in that linear vector space using the same set of basis vectors. So we can always use the unperturbed basis states K naught to express N1, K10(1) say. Okay, how do we do that? This is very easy. So we take N1 and we write it as identity and then N1, and we use the completeness of these eigenbases of these K0 vectors, and we introduce the completeness relation as ket K naught bra K naught sum over K, and then we have N1. So we just wrote this down. This whole object from completeness is basically identity operator. Now you will say, why we are saying that there is a sum here? So of course K is just denoting this vector, but there is a summation over this K simply because these objects can be thought of as phi K naught. Okay, so writing nk in this fashion, it implies that it is nothing but K naught. So there is a summation over K, and this naught again implies that we are in the unperturbed basis. So this is just this K naught is just a shorthand notation. So indeed there is a summation over K. If you think of this K as a subscript, then there is a summation over this K. Now what you can do is that you can actually even break this object, what we have written here. We can break this object as follows. We write this as N naught. We just separate this N out of this equation, and then we write K naught N1 with this summation where there is no K equal to N. This is very easy to understand. See, when we wrote this down, we use the fact that K is no longer equal to N. Now here, when we wrote this summation, there is one nth eigenbasis which may be written as phi n0. That eigenbasis, we are separating it out. That is just one single term in this summation, and that is denoted by n naught. Kate N naught, bra N naught, and then inner product with N1. Whatever rest remains will contain a summation, and in this summation there will be no n term. Okay, so let us denote this equation as 4. Now what about this n naught n1 term, this inner product between n naught n1? So for that, let us actually go back to the expansion of n in terms of lambda. Okay, if you recall, this n was n naught plus lambda n1 plus lambda square n2 and so on and so forth. What were these n naught, n1, n2? N naught was the eigenstate corresponding to the unperturbed Hamiltonian. N1 was the first order correction to the energy eigenstate due to the perturbing Hamiltonian H1. N2 was the second order correction to the energy eigenstate because of the perturbation H1. And in this manner there will be infinite number of terms in this series, and in order for the perturbation theory to be valid, each term will be smaller compared to the previous term. Now we know we actually require that this n, ket n, which is the eigenstate of the total Hamiltonian capital H, be normalized. So we write it as 1 equal to n n. That is the normalization condition. That means we take this n naught lambda n1 plus lambda square n2 and take the dual of this. So that means we have n naught plus lambda star n1, but lambda we have initially said that this is real. So we have n1 lambda plus n2 lambda and so lambda squared and other terms, and then this will be n naught plus lambda n1 plus lambda square n2 like this plus other higher order terms. So now what we do is that we take this equation and write it as 1 n bra n ket. This n naught will first act on this n naught and it will be n naught ket, n naught bra, and then there will be a this lambda order term. Lambda order term will be lambda n1 acting on n naught, this term and this term, and there will be another lambda order term when we consider this on this. So this is lambda n naught n1, and then when we consider this on this, we will be having higher order term in lambda, that is lambda square n1 n1, and then subsequently we will have more higher order terms in lambda. But since we are dealing with only up to lambda order, so let me safely write this, neglect all higher order terms and safely write this as lambda n1 n naught plus n naught n1, right, and we neglect all higher order terms. So this is ket n bra n ket n, and this is equal to 1. But you immediately see that this object is already 1 because this is normalized. So we will have, this immediately implies that lambda n1 n naught plus n naught n1 must be 0. This quantity must be 0. Therefore n1, or let me write it as n naught n1 plus n naught n1 star should be equal to 0. So what do we have here? This is very simple. Here this is the complex conjugate of this object. Both are numbers because these are inner products. So what can we say about a quantity when this quantity and its complex conjugate both vanishes. When you sum over this quantity and its complex conjugate, the result is 0. This means that there is no real part of the original quantity. That means, suppose this one n0 n1 star, I write it as a plus ib because it can be complex, and n0 n1 I write therefore should be a minus ib. If you add these two things up, this goes away and this is 0, so that means a must be 0. So there cannot be any real part. Okay, so immediately you see that you can come into a conclusion from this result that n0 n1, this quantity must be some imaginary I times alpha with alpha real. Okay, so this is the conclusion of this whole exercise. Okay, so this means that if this object is equal to 0, this means that this can only be purely imaginary, and we write this pure imaginary quantity as I times alpha with alpha being some real quantity. Therefore, let us again write down this expression or the expansion n up to lambda order term. So we just keep the two terms n equal to n naught plus lambda n1. This will become something like this, that n ket n is equal to n naught plus, but let us actually recapitulate from this previous expression. I think I have written it somewhere here. Yes, here from equation 4 we can immediately see that n1, this is ket n1 equal to ket n0 bra n0 ket n1. So we just have proved that n0 n1, this quantity is purely imaginary. Therefore this object n0 n1 is nothing but I times alpha plus whatever is here, that is okay. So in this expansion of n as n0 plus lambda n1, we will be using equation 4 that we have written here. Using equation 4, we will be writing this ket n1 instead of this ket, and what result we will get because of that? So we will have 1 I alpha lambda ket n0 plus lambda times sum over k not equal to n k0 n1, and we will always neglect all the higher order terms. So that's what you finally obtain. So I have simply used equation 4 here. Instead of ket n1, I have replaced ket n1 by this object. So let me just put a box around this. So this n1 is equal to n0 n1 plus whatever the rest of the terms in the summation. So we put it in this expansion of ket n. So now let us see what we obtain from this expansion. It is very interesting from this stage onwards. So we will take this n naught common. Sorry. We will take this n naught common and we will have 1 plus I alpha lambda plus summation with a lambda outside k not equal to n k0 k0 n1 plus higher order terms in lambda squared. Now here we will take advantage of the fact that if we have this 1 plus I alpha lambda up to order lambda, we can always expand, we can always use this as e to the power I alpha lambda. So this is true up to this order. Up to this order we can always prove, we can always say that. Therefore, what does this Kate n look like now after incorporating everything? So Kate n will therefore look like e to the power I alpha lambda Kate n naught plus sum over k not equal to n, k naught n1, and then all the higher order terms which we really do not bother about. There is a lambda here. So note one important thing, that even after Kate n is normalized, its phase, overall phase, can be chosen arbitrarily. That is because it is a phase and it does not enter into any physical observables calculation. Thus, it is convenient always to require that alpha is 0, because this Kate n has an arbitrariness in its overall phase even after it is normalized. That means n0 n1 is equal to 0, because you started with n0 n1 which is I alpha, and because of this arbitrariness in phase we have chosen this alpha to be equal to 0, and therefore this immediately tells you that you can actually start with n0 n1 to be orthogonal. That is what is the conclusion from this whole exercise, that n0 n1, in fact you can see later on also, if you calculate even higher order perturbations, these orthogonality conditions will always be helping. So that to this order in lambda, Kate n and Kate n0 have the same phase. This is a natural choice, since then the first order correction Kate n1 is orthogonal to the state n naught, and the perturbative correction generates the state Kate n, which to this order points in a slightly different direction. That's what is the meaning of this whole calculation. So what I mean to say is that if I denote this Kate n1, Kate n in this direction, then Kate n naught will be in a slightly different direction, and for perturbation theory to be effective, the angle between n and n naught must be small. You have to remember that although we have written this or drawn this figure with these arrows, this is just to show you that these are kind of vectors, but as you all know that these vectors are not the vectors that you encounter in the ordinary three-dimensional space. These are the members of the linear vector space, which is a complete inner product space, and in principle you cannot visualize this in this manner. The Kate vectors are vectors in a complex linear vector space, so this picture with real angle should not be taken literally. So this is just a kind of a warning to you that this is just for visualization of what we have just said. Let me repeat once again, because this is important. We have first shown that even after n is normalized, its phase can be chosen arbitrarily, and that arbitrary phase can always be set equal to 0. So that immediately tells you, or that immediately gives you this fact that these n0, n1 are orthogonal. So that to this order in lambda, n and n0 have the same phase. Why we are saying that? If your alpha is 0, then this becomes 1, e to the power I alpha lambda becomes 1, and then this n ket and n0 ket, they will be in the same phase, or they have the same phase. Yeah, so this is a natural choice, since because this then the first order correction, which is denoted by ket n1, is orthogonal to the state n0, and the perturbative correction generates the state ket n with this with all these ket n0 sitting here, ket n1 sitting here, and all those ideas, all those expressions. Therefore, you can always say that the perturbative correction leads to this following result, to the eigenstate of energy of the full Hamiltonian, that is ket n is equal to ket n naught plus lambda ket k naught. But now you choose this expression for, or you use this expression for k naught n1, which is k naught h1 n naught divided by e naught n e naught k, with k not equal to n. This is up to order lambda, so there will always be higher order terms in this expansion. So here we have used the expression which we have derived earlier for this k naught n1. So where did we derive this? This one. So equation 3 actually tells you, this equation 3 if we use, it actually gives you, so you put this expression here from equation 3 and finally arrive at this equation. So this is the, therefore you can see one important thing, that everything here is now written in terms of the unperturbed eigenstates. You see k naught everywhere, n naught, k naught, and the unperturbed eigenenergies. So this is the expression for the total state total eigenstate of the Hamiltonian up to order lambda, or up to first order. So what does this equation tell us? So this tells us, firstly, for full perturbation we can always set lambda equal to 1. This implies full perturbation. So if you have full perturbation, then your n is nothing but n naught plus sum over k naught equal to n, k naught bra perturbation Hamiltonian n naught ket divided by e naught n minus e naught k. This is therefore nothing but ket n naught plus ket n1. Therefore, your expression for the first correction to the energy eigenstate, because of the perturbation, is given by this. This is the first order correction to energy eigenstate. In some books, they prefer to write this like this, that they do not use the k not equal to n symbol here, rather they use a summation prime. This prime means that the sum over all values of k Here they have sum over all values of k. Let me explain this and let me write this here, that prime denotes sum over all k values except k equal to n. So this is another notation. Many books uses k not equal to n. Some other books use prime, some prime, meaning that k not equal to n. So it is obvious from this discussion here that for the perturbation method to be applicable, not only should the magnitude of the perturbation be small, but look at this expression. We have this quantity En0 minus Ek0 in the denominator. Therefore, it's so in order for this perturbation to be valid, we also require the off diagonal matrix elements of the perturbation Hamiltonian in the unperturbed basis. That means this object to be small compared to the level differences of the unperturbed system. That means we will always require k naught h1 n naught to be much smaller than En naught minus Ek naught. This is very important, because if this is not true, then this perturbation expansion will not be valid. Why? Because you see, if k naught h1 n naught, this matrix element, so this is the matrix element of the perturbing Hamiltonian in the unperturbed basis. If this matrix element is greater than the energy difference En naught minus Ek naught, this whole object here will be more than 1, and therefore since we have written it in terms of this eigenvector, so there is this k naught sitting here, all these summations in this term will be more than this k n naught. Therefore the perturbing Hamiltonian will no longer be or the perturbation series or the perturbation process should no longer be valid. So this is how you calculate the first order correction to energy and first order correction to the energy eigenstates. So as a homework, as an assignment, as a homework, calculate the second order correction to energy and energy eigenstates. Also find out the general expression for kth order correction. Try to find this out. So I would say that this part may be a little bit cumbersome, but if you can figure this out, it will really be good. Okay, so let me stop today here. Next day onwards, we will be discussing a few examples, and then we will be going to the non-degenerate perturbation theory. Degenerate perturbation theory.